Welcome into the Daily Roto Sharks podcast. I'm Jeremy Kahn. You can catch me on Twitter at JeremyCahn1057. Joined alongside Benjamin. That's X Benjamin X. And first off, sorry I missed the podcast the other night. I was talking to you. I got back from the movies, and we just adopted a new dog, and he just, or I should say, just dropped a deuce all over the entire house. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever had to deal with in my entire life, and I have two kids. So
yeah, when you told me that, I couldn't believe it, man. I didn't know whether to be amused or be saddened by your situation.
It was so disgusting, man. Dog had ripped through the cage and just dragged crap everywhere. It was on its paws, so it was up and down the steps, and then downstairs it went again. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about an afternoon baseball slate. And kind of cool. This is something different because typically we're recording the night before. Now we're leading into the games, and this is your specialty. It's a small slate, 4 games. Pitching is going to be interesting to see where people go here, as there's a lot of high totals. But again, a 4-game slate, so you attack things a little differently.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we always have to figure out on a small slate is where the ownership's going to go. And, typically we break down game by game, but I think it might be worth it to just kind of look at it as a brief overview and then get into the game. So with that said, this is X Benjamin X from DailyRotoSharks.com. You could follow me on Twitter at X Benjamin X, and let's get into this. Look at the slate. We know that everybody loves Toronto lately. We've been waiting for them to heat up, and they had a huge inning the other night. It's the best hitters park on the slate, so I think that's where you're going to get a lot of the ownership in the bats. Them and probably Arizona and maybe Houston. So those 3 teams should be the highest owned stacks. So just keep that in mind when we're breaking these down.
Just a couple things, when we were talking about the pitching slate, and I'll just run through the names on this slate. I mean, you have Godley versus Kuhl, Adelman versus Bolsinger. It's Nola versus Straley, which I think a lot of people will probably go there for pitching. It's the lowest total on the board. And David Paulino versus Hector Santiago. Now, you and I were talking about Paulino before, a guy that was a nice prospect for the Astros, but the past few times he had strikeout upside, but he had some control issues. Now, I'm talking about over a year ago. Who knows what's been straightened out, but I mean, he's very inexpensive, $4K on DraftKings. So I'm wondering, like Minnesota, could that be a sneaky stack? But I don't know that anything's ultimately all that sneaky on a 4-game slate. It's just picking your spots, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're looking at someone like a Paulino, you have to want the upside there, and you have to have places to really pay up for with your bat. So personally, that's not somewhere I'll go. You said he has control issues, or at least he did when he was in the minors. Looking at his numbers now, his usage in terms of pitches, he throws a 4-seam fastball, he throws a curveball, slider, and a changeup. And so far, he's only really gotten people out swinging and missing on that slider, and he doesn't throw it nearly enough. For me, I'd probably be on the other end attacking him because, Minnesota's been heating up. They're always so low owned. I think that's a place where you'll be able to get a little bit of lower ownership with some of those lefties there. But so you want to get into each of the games?
Yeah, let's dive into it. Let's start with the first one. It's Arizona and Pittsburgh. We talked about it briefly, but Chad Kuhl, another inexpensive pitcher guy. He's been rocked by some left-handers. So maybe that's where you're looking for Arizona. But Zach Godley, one of the more expensive pitchers on this slate. Vegas implied run total for the Diamondbacks, it's 4.3. And for the Pirates, it's 4.3. One of the lower totals on this slate as well, but virtually a pick'em game. What are your thoughts? Or I shouldn't say no. That's the Miami game I'm thinking of as a lower total. But your thoughts on these Arizona bats? Because I was talking to CG the other night, and he said a lot of people forget to target Arizona on the road. But Jake Lamb's probably a lock for cash games. But give me your thoughts on the 2 lineups and anybody you may be looking at for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm always trying to be considerate of this, but Jake Lamb's going to be the highest owned third baseman, and he may end up being one of the highest owned players on the slate. There's a lot of money to go around. You know, you don't have to pay up for pitching. You have a couple guys in the outfield, but only one that's over 4K. So you really can fit people. So I think Jake Lamb's going to be super high owned, and for good reason. You know, Cool struggles versus lefties. I think you'll be able to avoid that in GPPs. You know, that'll be a fade, but he is someone who can have 1 or 2 home runs today. But it looks like, you know, leading off, there's 3 lefties out of the first 4 spots. You have Blanco at 2.7, Peralta. I like the Arizona bats a lot. Mostly the top 4 though. So I would be stacking probably little mini stacks with those guys. Or I would go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think I would not go with much else in that lineup, except for maybe like a Chris Iannetta or something, because he's only 2.3, or a Daniel Descalso, who's only 2. I mean, Iannetta's 2.6 and Descalso's 2.3. So I would definitely consider both of those guys. And Zach Galli's been pitching pretty well. He's had 3 40-point games, FanDuel point games in his last 5 games. I think he's going to get some ownership. I think all the pitching ownership is basically going to go with Nola, Straley, and then Godley. Even though that the Pirates have a pretty high implied total, it's nice out and it's a pick'em game. I think that I think he's going to be pretty popular just because of what he's been able to do lately.
Well, real quick, just as far as strategy goes, because I know you don't like leaving any money on the board, but on a short slate where, especially when the pitching's relatively cheap and you can pretty much get whatever you want, is this a slate where you may leave some money on the board?
It really depends. I don't think I'm going to need to.
Okay.
But yeah, I usually try to spend as much as possible. You know, I'll be pretty close to it today. You know, there is money to spend, and I don't think you're going to need to leave a lot on the board. But if I wanted to do 2 stacks, there may not even be enough to spend up for. So with that said, you know, a lot of people spend way up. So if you're looking in the outfield, you know, you're going to have Batista and Springer. They're both going to be very popular. So if you want to be different, you're going to have to leave a little bit of money on the board, getting away from those guys. And David Peralta's in a good spot for that. You know, he hasn't shown too much upside lately, but hitting in the 2-hole, he should be able to get on base a couple times and score a run or 2. And there's pretty fine options in the outfield that you could pay down for. So yeah, this may be a day that I end up leaving money on the board, but it's just, you know, like you said, it's not something I typically enjoy doing.
All right, let's look at this Reds and Blue Jays game. The Blue Jays have an implied run total of 5. The Reds are at 4.7. As I said, Tim Adelman, right-hander, versus Mike Bolsinger, another right-hander. The total in the game is 9.5, so a really high total. And you mentioned some of those Blue Jays bats, you know, and a lot of people have been targeting first base with Morales and Smoke. You know, and you look, Devin Travis has been hitting the ball pretty well. And you look at that Reds lineup as well. You know, you got some speed at the top, clearly. Joey Votto, Duvall, if you're looking for homers. Give me your take. Are you going to be looking at any of these bats or either one of these pitchers?
I think this is a great game stack. I think this is where I would go if I was doing any games in terms of just stacking the whole game, and I probably will end up doing that. I like bats on both sides. Smoke will be popular. You're going to have Kendrys Morales probably with a little bit less ownership, but he's been really hot lately. But I think just the way that it always goes, you just kind of always see Smoke a little bit higher ownership. But Morales being 3.3K, I think it's a nice little $300 drop off. And he definitely does have home run upside, but it just sucks you have to pick between the 2 of them. This may be a situation where if you're going with Toronto, you know, you can avoid Jose Bautista if you think he's going to be too high owned, but you have options all over this team. So this is a situation where you can do like little mini stacks if you wanted to, with like, let's say, you know, you do Carrera, Morales, and like Coughlin, Goins or something. The one thing you would have to worry about is one of 2 of those players at the bottom, Coughlin or Goins, might be taken out and only get 3 at bats this game. If there's a lefty that comes in out of the bullpen later on. But yeah, I like hitters from both of these teams. I could even see you going with the righty on righty matchups if you needed to. Schebler's been on fire. Duvall hits righties pretty well. You know, he has a 269 ISO versus lefties, but he also has a 233 versus righties. So the guy has pop on both sides. You have Votto, Hamilton. Honestly, I'm going to be stacking this game up and down, and that's probably where I'll have most of my exposure on this slate, I'd say.
All right, let's talk about the Phillies and the Marlins, because I think these might be the two pitchers that a lot of people will target. Aaron Nola, at DraftKings, I know he's 8K, and Dan Straley's at 9K. Marlins have an implied run total of 3.9, and the Phillies at 3.7. So it is the lowest total of the 4 games. Straley has some strikeout upside. Nola does too. Last night, the Marlins bats kind of went off early. We saw, a guy like Giancarlo Stanton, who I don't think he's in the lineup today. He's out.
Yep.
Getting the day off. He had a homer getting back on track there. And, it's funny because whenever I stack the Phillies, I feel like I always get them wrong. I'm a day off on them. Tell me if you like either one of these lineups as far as bats, but is this a game you'll target the starting pitching?
This is an interesting situation because we do know there's going to be a lot of ownership with these pitchers. I don't think for me I'd be really too high on Straley if I were going to be playing. He's pitched pretty well lately, but he's giving up a lot of hard contact to righties. He's a big fly ball pitcher. The park protects him a little bit, but there are a couple of random guys who can pop off with a home run here or there on the Phillies side. It's a situation where I don't think I would go with any Phillies, but I probably wouldn't be on Straley. I would prefer Nola, but I also like the Miami bats. So it's an interesting situation for me. I'm probably gonna roll out Nola in one of. Oh man, look, he's playing so many lefties. That's tough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lefties he's facing. That's going to be a tough situation for him. He's been pretty good against lefties so far this year, striking them out at a high clip. He does have a 1.57 whip and a 50% ground ball rate. So this is a tough situation for me. I think Nola will probably be one of the highest owned. I think this is a situation where I might not use either one of these pitchers and maybe just go with Godley against Pittsburgh. I know they have one of the highest totals on the slate, but I do really like Godley. Our sheets don't like him much, but this is more of just like kind of a game theory play for me. I think he's going to have the lower ownership of these guys.
You should bet the sheets are free today, right?
Yeah, we have them free on the site today. We do that every once in a while. We did it for our boy Fuego Steve. He was on Sirius XM Fantasy this morning, so we just wanted to put him out for free for today for anyone who is coming over from there. Try them out. They're fully functional on the site. But yeah, like I said, it's a tough situation for me because I do like both of these pitchers, and the sheets don't really like Godley much, just because Pittsburgh really hasn't been striking out as much against righties, but there's only 2 lefties in that lineup. I was on Nola before seeing the Miami lineup. There's too many lefties in there. I think this is a good situation where you could actually get some decent low ownership from the Miami bats. People will be on Nola. I think this is a good situation where you use Miami as one of the lower owned stacks. So if you're stacking Toronto, then you can stack them with Miami. If you're stacking Arizona or even Houston, we'll get to that, then you can stack them with Miami. This is a situation where even though I know that Nola is in a pretty decent spot, I think he can get hit up today. I think Straley can get hit up. He's given up a lot of hard contact to righties, and he's facing a decent amount of righties and switch hitters. So even though the totals are low in this game, I'm not really on it. So for me, I like JT Riddle at shortstop, 2.7K. He's flashed upside lately. D Gordon, he's someone who can steal a base for you. He can get on base. He's been hitting the ball pretty well. So I like I kind of like this Miami stack a little bit more even as we look at it. I like Gordon, Riddle, Yelich. I'd probably skip over Ozuna, even though he can hit a home run, because I like Bohr. Bohr's been on fire, and this guy can pop off anytime. The one thing that you would be worried about is the ballpark, but in order to kind of alleviate that for you, they're facing two of the worst bullpens on the season so far. And the Philly bullpen has let up a 1.5 home run per nine, 1.6 home run per nine so far this season. So I think Miami is in a pretty good low owned spot today. All of the lefties are in play, honestly.
Well, before we get to the Houston Minnesota game, just as I'm looking at the numbers, it's a 4-game slate, and you got enough information out because as far as the totals go to kind of realize where they're going to be. I mean, Arizona, Pittsburgh 8.5, Philadelphia, Miami is 8, and the other two games are 10 and 9.5 respectively. 10 for Houston, Minnesota, Toronto, Cincinnati's at 9.5, and all that means is, at least in my opinion, that people that are going to look at this are going to go, well, those two games, Philadelphia, Miami, Arizona, Pittsburgh, are going to be the lower total. So those are the ones I should target for pitching. I've seen a couple different things out there. Would you target any one of these guys, the pitchers, the lesser known guys? And if you're playing multiple lineups in tournaments, I don't know how often you do that. Is it something where you try to mix up the pitching and use your stacks the same way, or I don't know if I'm making sense to you, just trying to get your thoughts strategy-wise.
It all depends on the amount of pitchers I'd feel comfortable with. I like Nola, but I'm starting to like the Miami bats a little bit more. This is a situation where Nola could have a pretty decent day, but I think the ownership and the potential of getting blown up against these lefties puts him at a less situation for me. So normally, let's say Miami rolled up a bunch of righties out there, then I'd probably go with Godley and Nola as my two. I think Straley's due for regression. He's been pitching pretty well. He hasn't gotten through 6 innings in the last. He's only done it once in one of the last 5 games, 6 games actually. So gives up a ton of runs, lets up home runs. So I'm not comfortable playing him, even though he's playing against a bunch of the righties. I think I'm going to be going with Godley as my pitcher, and then just wrapping a bunch of different stacks around him. I'm not really worried about this Pittsburgh offense. Yeah, like if
you get beat by him, right?
Would use 2 pitchers and wrap stacks around them, but I'll probably just go all in with Godley.
All right, let's talk Astros and Twins, because the Astros are a slight favorite, about a 140 favorite on the road. David Polino versus Hector Santiago. Santiago's a lefty. Polino's a right-hander. Houston has an implied run total of 5.4, the highest on the slate. The Twins are at 4.7. I'm wondering if people are going to stack the wrong. This is a catch-22 because Polino is going to have such low ownership that maybe it ends up being a great tournament play, and I do think he has the high strikeout upside. But clearly, when you look at a guy like this, he has the capability of coming in and walking the bases loaded and giving up a bomb. Not saying worst-case scenario, but when you talk about young pitchers, this happens from time to time. Santiago, a left-hander going up against this Astros lineup, it doesn't look all that appealing from taking either one of these pitchers. But I think the Twins lineup, not to say it's going to be sneaky, but I think everybody's going to be all over Houston, and the Twins is probably where I would go.
Yep, exactly. And I do like Houston a lot. I think they're going to be one of the most popular stacks for a reason. They're facing Hector Santiago, who has just not been good. I called him for a home run regression a couple weeks ago, and then he gave up a bunch of home runs to my Cleveland boys. Their bullpen isn't good. He's been letting up a ton of hard contact to lefties, and not even as much to righties. He's actually been getting crushed versus lefties in the 5 innings that he pitched. But yeah, for me, you stack up Houston. Houston's going to be my top stack with Toronto. I like those two the most. And then my lower owned stacks will be Miami and Minnesota. And, I'm putting these together as we talk.
Yeah.
I like almost everybody on Houston. You can go 1 through 4. You can do a couple mini stacks. You could do, 1 through 3 with a one-off on that side. And then on the Twin side, you're facing, a control issue righty Dozier's in play. He hits righties pretty well. He's been on a tear lately. He just broke a hit streak last game. He had, I think, like 11 games in a row with a hit. Jorge Polanco in the 2 spot. He's been doing pretty well lately. I don't really like the 3.1K at shortstop. I'd probably rather go Riddle, so I'd skip over him. And then I like Kepler, Grossman, and Rosario. So if you were doing a 4-man stack, I like Dozier, Kepler, Grossman, Rosario. And if you wanted to, you could leave out Dozier and then go with Jason Castro as your catcher and just go full lefties and try to expose Polino as early as you can.
All right, so those are the 4 games on this early slate, and just as we were talking about it, some of your favorite stacks you expect to be highly owned as far as the stacks go.
Yeah, well, I think I'm gonna go with the chalk stacks of Toronto and Houston. I like both of them, but like I say to you guys, just make sure your stacks are different than other people's stacks. Or if you're gonna do it, pair them with a lower owned team. So if you go in Toronto, pair them with Miami or Minnesota. If you go in Houston, pair them with Miami or Minnesota. You can do that Arizona stack like we talked about earlier with the top 4 if you wanted to, and then pair them with like Cincinnati or something like that. So just get a little funky. Just know you like 1 or 2 stacks and then pair them with other stacks that you like. If you're talking about cash games, you just want to pick the best spot at each position and not worry as much about ownership. But when we're looking at stacks for GPPs, you want to be talking about, or at least thinking about the ownership and how it's going to affect. So you can be using a high owned stack, but at the same time, you can pair them with the lower owned ones. And just as a note here, there's some overlay pretty big time in MLB right now. There's some rallies that you can get into. There's one that has 10 out of 130 people right now for $9. I'm not sure if that'll fill up, but I definitely recommend going to look through the lobby right now and looking at some overlay. This is one of the best ways to look at your GPPs. Just because, like, if you catch overlay right before it starts, you're putting yourself in a good spot to make some money. There's a $3 squeeze with 40 people out of 784. It starts in 13 minutes, but there are possibilities that these may not fill. So what I like to do is right before it locks, I'll sit in the lobby, I'll click refresh a couple times and just look to see if I can catch any overlay. Sometimes you'll find tickets in there, like let's say there's a $7 big swing ticket you can win for $1 and only like a quarter of the satellite fills. Like it's worth putting your lineup in there because, you can get a 7x return on a ticket. You put in $1 and you get a $7 ticket. Like it's worth it. A lot of people love getting satellites like that. And, when you do that, just make sure you have upside in your lineup.
Well, I know lock's coming up for the early slate here in just over 10 minutes. One of the things I wanted to ask you, FanDuel's doing their single entry series thing going on over the next few weeks, I believe. Do you attack a single entry GPP differently than you would one of the bigger ones? And do you worry as much about ownership? What's your thought process on how to attack those?
I'm always considering ownership, and single entry, it gets even more inflated because people play it a little bit more safe. So like where you would go a little bit more balls to the wall in a large GPP, I and most others would tamper it back a little bit. But so like if you think that there's going to be ownership in a pitcher at like 60-70%, I almost always fade him, even if I really like him. Except for when it's like a super elite pitcher like a Max Scherzer or someone like 10+ K upside, that's when you can't really fade them or it becomes a lot harder. But yeah, the way I like to approach it is I just think about how do I make my lineup itself different? And you could still do that by spending all the money. You just have to make sure that you're not falling into a trap of what everyone else is doing. And it's a good way. Like we did the overview to start, you just look at the totals, you see where you think everyone's going to go just on first glance. Like if someone was looking at it for 5 minutes, where would they go to first? Like what would, if you see, Clayton Kershaw at 10K, versus a struggling team, you know, everyone's going to try to fit him in, you know, and then you have to base your lineup construction around that. And if you plan on using him or fading him. So this is the best way to approach it, is looking at the big picture first and trying to figure out exactly what you think can happen with a game. Like the other night, I won a GPP going with Cueto over Kershaw in a 3-game slate, just because the way I was thinking about it is, it's not what Kershaw can do, but can someone else match what he can do?
Yeah.
So if they both get 40, if they both get 45, then the savings that you're getting and the ownership that you're saving is worth it. And Kershaw ended up having, you know, his worst start of the season that night, and Cueto had one of his best ones. So these are the type of things you have to weigh back and forth.
Well, here, I'll let you go first. Let's talk about some of the home run possibilities today, and give me a few players that you like. One that, and normally we play a game, but we don't have to do all that. I'm just interested in throwing some players out there. The one guy that I really like is Grossman. He's batting cleanup for the Twins, and I just think this is a perfect spot for him to get a hold of one. But give me a couple names that you like in this 4-game slate.
I think that you should be targeting the Toronto-Cincinnati game. I think there's going to be home runs popping off there. The two pitchers who are pitching are the two worst in terms of home run per fly ball. Home run per 9 in the last year and a half. When looking at the fly ball pitchers, you have the Houston bats. So I'd say put the majority of your stakes around Toronto, Houston, and then stacking the Toronto Cincinnati game as a game stack with Godley. And if you want to use Straley or Nola, you can. I think there's going to be a little bit higher ownership there. Our sheets love Nola, but Miami rolled out a bunch of lefties there. Even Suzuki batting in the 8 spots a lefty. They have a lot there, and that puts me a little bit more on Miami, even though their total's lower. So for me, my favorite plays are Toronto, Cincinnati stack, a Houston and Miami stack, and like a Toronto and Minnesota stack. I think that's where you'll be able to get your chalk in and differentiate. And I'm going to be on mostly Godley and maybe one Nola lineup. Like if I'm making 3, I would probably do 2 Godley and a Nola.
Yeah, I think those are clearly going to be the ways to go. Anything else as far as today that you think people should look at? Just looking at a small slate, and all the lineups are out, so you know who's going to be in there. You're missing some big bats. We talked about a few of them early. Miguel Sano's out. Giancarlo Stanton's out. So there's might be some added value, but you really don't need too much because of the pitching slate.
Yeah, as much as we like Nola. Nola's been pitching pretty well. I think the team that is going to really kind of surprise everyone is Miami. They have the lowest total. They're facing a really bad bullpen. So even if they don't get to Nola the way they should, I think you have a good chance to get to that bullpen. They had their totals around 4. I think they put up 4 or 5 today. But Toronto, Houston, that's where you should be able to see a ton of runs today. So Toronto, Houston, and then Miami stacks are my favorite. And then you mix them in with the Toronto Red stack, and maybe you could throw some of those Minnesota guys in there. And I also like those first 4 for Arizona. But those are probably more of a mini stacks or mix and matches for me with Arizona. I don't think I would be doing the full 1 through 4 stack.
Well, I know I'll be back again tonight around 11:30. We'll be doing our podcast for tomorrow's slate, Thursday's slate. Anything else you want to add in? Again, the sheets, check them out today. They're free on the website. Yeah.
One thing I want to add is make sure you start getting into this WNBA fad.
Oh, I should have brought that up. You've been killing it over there, man. It's crazy.
I'm up $2,000 this week. I won another 1,200 last night. Just using the sheets that I've been putting up. I've been putting up for free. It's DailyRotoSharks.com /WNBA-sheets. And man, like I've just been crushing. I swept 2 tournaments yesterday. I took first and second with 2 different lineups in the $25, and it was just kind of crazy, honestly. Like my team went off early, my first team, and that took first place. And then my second team, which had a few more players in the second game, ended up coming from behind, taking over the first spot, and I ended up with 1-2 in the $25 just from using the sheets in WNBA, breaking them.
Wait to see you doing the podcast in a Candace Parker jersey or something.
Oh man, yeah, she crushed for me yesterday. Her and the girl on Nene Okwimike.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. I feel so bad saying I know who you're talking about because
I'm still learning. Like I never thought in my life that I would be watching WNBA, sweating WNBA, playing WNBA, but man, it's fun. I think I'm going to start doing some periscopes about them as well, and talking about like how you can attack it, what you should be looking for. Like it's the same as NBA. What's up, guys? It's the same as NBA, honestly. Like, and the way that I like to look at it is, I have the players who start on there the most. Like I don't have projected starts, but I show you like, if a girl's played 4 of the 4 games for her team this season, she started all 4 games. She's obviously the starter, So I have the results on there each day from the previous day to see how you did. You could backtrack, you could save them and look at other results and how teams did against each other. But yeah, it's been fun. I've been loving it. And I've actually been putting a lot of time into the developments of the sheet, so I haven't been playing as much MLB this week. I did win the GPP on Sunday with Cueto, but I won 2 WNBA GPPs this week, and I think that's where I'm starting to put a lot of my focus right now, because there is money to be made there. There is a lot of overlay that pops up. They've been expanding the size of the contest. Some people still are going in blind, not looking at any data and everything. So there's some dead lineups. There's a lot of money to be made there. And I'm putting a lot of time into it. I might start putting out content, but mostly it's going to be like some periscopes here or there or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, no BS, because we're all on a group chat on Twitter, and you send over the screenshots of your lineups. It's been pretty crazy to see that you've been raking in that much money from the WNBA of all things.
Oh, dude, it's crazy. I was with my best friend's CO yesterday, and my dad came in the room. He's like, "What are you guys watching? Like women's basketball?" He's like, "What?" He's like, "It's baseball season." I'm like, "I know, but it's been going pretty well for us so far." Yeah, let me just show you something real quick.
Yeah, I mean, and lock's coming up in a couple minutes for Major League Baseball, so make sure you're getting your lineup switched up, getting locked in, all the other things, and looking for the overlap.
The Periscope right now, I took first and second in this, the $25. It was pretty crazy. I don't know how it happened. Like I know what I was looking at and the players I was looking at, but like I still can't believe that I'm making so much money in WNBA, honestly. So if you see it right here, I took first and second. This lineup right here took first out of 100 people, and it was pretty crazy, man. Honestly, like I'm still in shock. Sweating WNBA this week. It's been crazy. You're watching these girls and they go up there, and you're getting almost an open layup, and then this girl just bricks it or throws it out of bounds and like hits the side of the backboard. It's hysterical. There's no dunking. There's barely any 3-pointers. It's like watching like high school games. But some of these girls are super talented.
Yeah.
And they're clear standouts, but some of them, man, they shoot and the ball just like misses the backboard and everything just goes out of bounds. So like, it's just funny watching and sweating it.
Well, I'm getting ready to head in and host my radio show, which from 2 to 6, we will not be talking about the WNBA at all. But it was nice to get some action in here and talking with you. So we'll be back later tonight discussing Thursday's slate. Ben, as always, man, appreciate it. It's been fun, and hopefully some people out there make some money. And definitely go to DailyRotoSharks.com. Check out the free sheets today. See what's making everyone money.
Absolutely. Take care, guys. Have a good day and make some money.